Against the vote of the Arab states, the United Nations approves the Partition Plan for Palestine. 33 votes in favor, 13 against. The link map shows the Jewish share of land in the British Mandate from 1942. The dark areas indicate the Jewish settlement areas. The white area represents Arab land. The main focus of the Jewish settlement lie especially on the coast, between Tel Aviv and Haifa, Acre along the Haifa-Jordan Railway, and in the upper Jordan Valley as far as Lebanon, in addition in the inner Jerusalem. The map in the middle shows the Partition Plan of the United Nations in 1947. The dark areas indicate the ones of the Jews. The light one the Arab state. Jerusalem is an international enclave under UN control in the middle of Arab territory. The demarcation essentially follows the lines of the Jewish settlement areas, but includes some Arab territories in the Jewish state. The right map shows the Israel state in the 1948 borders, which have been drawn from the ceasefire lines after the First Arab-Israeli War. The American delegate Johnson sets out the new policy of his government. The United States has chosen partition as the only practical solution. The adopted plan provides for 2 independent states, an Arab one, a Jewish one, and Jerusalem as an international zone. Economically, the whole should remain a unit. In the interim period, a UN police force is to be formed for internal security.
The establishment of a special constabulary, or police force, recruited on a volunteer basis by the United Nations.
A Jewish delegate announces the decision of the new Jewish National Council in Palestine to form a provisional government by May 16, 1948. Impassively listens the Soviet delegate, Andrei Gromyko. The Soviet Union has already spoken out for the right of the Jews to a part of Palestine. Without the Soviet approval, the UN decision would not have been reached. The Jewish executive assures that the Jewish state will actively cooperate with the neighboring Arab states and enter into permanent treaty relations with them, strengthen peace and support the economic development in all states of the Middle East. The Jewish people extend their hand of peace to the Arab people, and call upon the representatives of the Arab population in the Jewish state to take their rightful place in all institutions and governmental authorities.
The development of all the countries of the Near East. The Jewish people extends the hand of peace to the Arab people and invites representatives of the Arab population of the Jewish state to take their rightful place in all its organs of government.
Into the gradual British retreat thrust the 2 opponents with their attacks. The Jewish militias are initiating local advances to round out their territory. They not only conquer diverse places like Tiberias and Safed in Galilee or Haifa on the coast, but also Arab cities like for instance Jaffa. An unprecedented and devastating event was the attack by a group of Jewish extremists on the Arab village, Deir Yassin, on April 9, 1948, which was not documented. All 150 inhabitants were killed. The raid was a calculated terror act, which was to drive the Arabs out of the coastal region. Political leaders have condemned it, but this did not change the outcome or the effect. The Arabs fled. On the 14th May 1948. In Tel Aviv, Ben-Gurion calls for the independence.
By virtue of natural and historical law and by virtue of the resolution of the United Nations, we proclaims the creation of the Jewish state in Palestine, calls Israel.
The old battle flag of Zionism flies over Tel Aviv for the first time as Israel's state flag. For the Jews of Palestine, this day, which is written on the Jewish calendar as the 5th Iyar of the year 5708, is the day of joy. But what Ben-Gurion wrote in his diary 3 years earlier at the end of the war in Europe also applies to him. You must not enjoy yourself, Israel, nor boast like other peoples. While the fighting continue across the country, the Haganah, now Israel's army, arms for war against the Arab states whose invasion is threatened. The first official parade in front of Ben Gurion is in reality already the army show for the campaign to defend the emerging national territory. Still, in the night of May 15, 5 Arab states strike out to occupy Palestine. The Egyptian Air Force attacks Tel Aviv with bombs. The destruction are not massive. The threats to Tel Aviv are not from the air, but from the south along the coastal road, from where the Egyptian army is advancing. The Arab Legion of Transjordan is the best Arab force. It advances across the Jordan River towards Jerusalem, to conquer the whole city. The battle for the Jewish Jerusalem is at the center of the war, because there are almost 100,000 Jews there, a quarter of the people, entrenched in the surrounding countryside. But the battle remains a draw. The Israelis are holding their ground, stripping their district and fighting to clear a narrow corridor to Tel Aviv. The Jordanians hold the Old City and East Jerusalem. The city remains divided until the War of 1967. The fighting between Israelis and Jordanians are in this war. In addition to repelling the Egyptian offensive on Tel Aviv, the main events. Golda Meir comes to America to campaign for Israel.
Jews were elated over the recognition of the United States.
The Jews are delighted with the recognition by the United States and full of joy that Jews can now come to the state of Israel without anyone standing in their way. And we are convinced that this war will end very quickly. For example, if the United States were willing to lift the arms embargo, and the Jews would get all the weapons they need.
At first, the war continues. Israel's first fighter planes intervene in the fighting. Such attacks also contribute to the exodus of the Arab population. The advancing Israeli troops occupy Arab localities. Soon they control most of the territory along the coast and all of Galilee. Street fighting lasts longest in cities, such as Jerusalem. To their surprise, the 5 Arab allies, Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Iraq and Lebanon, with their well-equipped regular armies, find themselves put on the defensive by the Israeli force. The UN oversees the indefinite ceasefire between Israel and the Arab enemy states. The war is over after 20 months over. 1% of the population of 1949 has been killed. But peace has not occurred. The Arabs have not accepted the state existence of Israel, nor its borders recognized. They also maintain the state of war. The UN will spend the next 25 years trying to maintain or restore the uneasy ceasefire. Members of the Soviet embassy pay their visit to President Weizmann for the first state reception after the end of the war. Moscow still sees a counterweight in the Jewish state to the traditional Arab monarchies. The homecoming of the dead Herzl, who had proclaimed the idea of the Jewish state, is the symbol of victory in the struggle for nationhood and historical homeland. But the old country remains divided. The price of the soon-to-be 50-year struggle for Palestine is on the Arab side the misery of the refugees and displaced persons. They have lost their historical and also familiar homeland. With it, their right to self-determination and a national state. About half of the 700,000 Arabs West Palestine have remained in the country. The other half live in camps beyond the new borders. The Arab states and the Palestinian nationalists will use them for decades to justify their state of war and political hostility against Israel.